Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and this is The Human Condition. We're talking today about which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Is it your brain or your gut that's the root cause of your problem? In the world of alternative medicine, lots of people know that you can have a problem with your gut that leads to a gut barrier problem where you have leaky gut syndrome. And this idea that the cells can be torn apart just a little bit or a lot means that there is a weak barrier. And if there is a weak barrier, we can allow in infectious organisms, we can allow in inflammatory molecules, we can have problems that would involve chemistry seeping into our gut that would otherwise not get in there, and then that would circulate through the bloodstream to our liver and ultimately to our organs and to our brain. That would be a mechanism by which, eating a certain way or allowing our guts to deregulate or decay in a fashion over time would lead to a brain problem. And that's pretty logical to a lot of people. So if you're new to it, the idea is take care of your gut and you take care of your brain. And likewise, if you've got a brain problem or some other problem of your body, it may have started in the gut. In fact, there are many phenomena where they describe that death begins in the gut or chronic disease begins in the gut. Holistic dentists say that death begins in the teeth and the mouth and that disease begins in the mouth. So the whole digestive tract from teeth to all the way to the other end, the 31 feet of your human gut system, can be the driver of the problem. So people will do elimination diets, people will do supplements, they'll try to strengthen their gut, they'll try to remove impediments to their gut, they'll try to remove toxins, they'll do cleanses, they'll do binders, they'll do colonics and enemas, they'll do all kinds of things to try to clean out and make their guts healthier and their liver detoxify and to allow themselves to otherwise grow a healthy gut. Now, it only takes about 3 or 4 days to grow a new cell lining of your gut, if you're healthy. So a healthy person would presumably grow a new gut lining every 3 or 4 days. But in people that have been ill for a long time, it may take a lot longer than that. So just realize that sometimes the reversal of a chronic condition, whether it be autoimmune, whether it be ultimately some organ that has a problem, whether it's in the heart, the brain, the kidneys, the lungs, whatever that chronic illness is, bronchitis, asthma, the root of it may be in the mouth and teeth or in the gut. Now, what I'd like to talk about next is when it's not. And there is a smaller, I think, group of people where the problem begins in the brain, and it starts in the brain, and that comes first, and then it shows up in the gut and the other organs and the immune system. Now, let me give you an example of that. Let's say that a perfectly healthy person gets a concussion. They get a blow to their head, they get a whiplash, something happens to their brain and their brain gets inflamed and they've got some damage to some areas. Maybe not permanent damage, maybe not cell death, maybe not complete rupture, but some dysfunction, some maladaptive behaviors and some inflammatory responses in different parts of the brain. Well, there are several pathways in the brain that descend and control other parts of our body. So there's the limbic system, which is the deep part of the brain, along with the cerebellum, and that's in the back. And so those two areas have descending fibers that control the autonomic nervous system and control our immune system, and they control our hormone system, our endocrine system. They control our digestive secretions. They control our immune responses and the antibodies that we make and how aggressive they are. They allow us to fight off cancer and regulate whether our immune system is going to be too strong or too weak or just right. And that can be injured in the brain. And thus, the brain is the driver of the problem in the guts or in the digestion or in the immune system or in the organs, or even with regard to the control of the lungs, the control of the heart. All of these autonomic functions can be under control and are under control of the brain and can be interrupted suddenly and sometimes slowly after an injury. In fact, you'll find that one of the most common procedures given to people that have had a car accident where they've had a concussion is they give them acid blockers, because within a few weeks of the injury, they notice that they have reflux and GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. So what happens is the injury to the brain caused a problem with the vagus nerve descending and the autonomic sympathetics that descend and control the stomach and the stomach acid. And so the solution, very non-creatively, is to just give a drug that blocks the acid instead of fixing the problem, which is going after the brain, healing the brain, and presumably restoring the function of those brain areas, which can be done. Another example of one of these pathways is the cortex, the surface of the brain. You've seen me show the surface of the brain and where we have frontal lobes and we have parietal lobes. And so that area of the main lobes that we talk about are called the neocortex, the new cortex. And so most of the surface of your brain that you would see is thought of as the neocortex. If the neocortex gets injured, it also has descending pathways that go down to a place in the brainstem called the PMRF, the paramedian pontine reticular formation. And that is the boss daddy of everything that's autonomic. That controls the sympathetics and the parasympathetics as well. And so a person could injure either their limbic system, which is the deep brain, and the cerebellum, which is the lowest part of the brain, and or they could injure their cortex, which is the highest part of their brain, the surface of their brain. All of the above could lead to, and is very well known in the textbooks, to lead to a problem of descending lack of control, lack of regulation, lack of self-regulation. And that can lead to emotional problems and outbursts. It can lead to digestive disturbances, secretions, problems with the immune system, problems with the endocrine or hormone system, problems with periods, problems with cortisol and sleep and sex hormones, problems with all of these systems can happen from a brain injury. Now, a person can get a brain injury from multiple sources. They could get a head injury or a whiplash where their head doesn't strike anything and their head just whips like this and the brain sloshes inside the skull. And without an impact to the head, the person can still have a brain injury or a concussion that leads to what seems disjointed and other diseases like autoimmune diseases or allergies or hormone dysregulation or digestive problems. These are all, or skin problems even. These are all pretty regular and pretty understood in the medical literature. They're not talked about by medicine because they're not treated with drugs or surgery. They're treated with rehab, and they're treated with neurofeedback, and they're treated with neurotherapies, and they're treated with diet. And we don't do that. Another thing that can happen with people is the chemical concussion. They can get a chemical concussion from artificial food, colors, flavors, preservatives. They can get it from an experience where they have anesthesia. They can get it from an overdose of benzodiazepines or other types of drugs, psychotropic drugs that they don't handle well. There are a number of psychotropic drugs that can interact with each other, as well as sometimes their first use can really set a person's brain off. And the genetics of our susceptibility vary from person to person. So it's not like everybody gets the same reaction. Some families have more of a trend to be sensitive to some set of chemicals. Some families may be more sensitive to heavy metals and less to food additives. And another family may be more sensitive to food additives and less sensitive to metals or less sensitive to gasoline or volatile organic compounds like paint thinner or benzene or gasoline. So these are different things that represent biochemical individuality. And we can't just dismiss them because they're not true for everyone all the time. They're true for subsets of people that are susceptible and vulnerable based on their genes and their environment. Further, other people can get a brain injury from aluminum. They can get aluminum exposure from water and from food and from underarm antiperspirants. They can get it from the adjuvants and jabs, which is to say shots. They can get aluminum from chemtrails, and there's been aluminum detected in material that drops from planes. This is a known phenomenon. It's been measured on cars. It's been measured in the soil. This is not a conspiracy theory. We can measure this stuff. We can find it in what they put in these planes. So it's very possible for a person to have a brain problem that drives the gut problem or drives the chronic organ problem. And often the solutions involve an EEG, an ERP, an evaluation by a psychologist, an evaluation by a chiropractic neurologist, a functional neurologist. And in these ways, we can figure out what's going on with a person, and we can begin to do the right rehab for them and pick the right brain area that needs help. We can do rehab that is of a exercise nature where they do specific brain rehab exercises to fix that part of their brain wherever it is. They can do neurofeedback to help restore that. They can do neuromodulation or neurostimulation, which is small microcurrent that's given to the brain, very safe and very useful. They can use photobiomodulation, which is light shined right through the skull and sunlight that goes right through the skull. Infrared light penetrates all the way through the brain and all the way through the skull and all the way through our organs, all the way through our bones, into our heart. All of our organs are bathed in infrared light when we go outside in the sun every single day. So this is something that we can do and that can help us, and it's free. You can buy lights anywhere from inexpensive $60 and $80 infrared lights all the way up to expensive ones that are very high grade and that have different flicker rates and all of these things. So there's lots of things you can do whether you have money or don't have money. You don't need to lose hope. In addition, elimination diets are extremely important. I think that supplements are useful, especially when somebody's acutely sick, but I don't think that supplements are a sustainable way to make a person healthy. If you got to take a boatload of supplements your whole life, there may be something you're missing, and maybe that's okay. I'm not saying it's not. It's just that very often I've seen that those who are dependent on buckets full of supplements are missing something in their diet. And last, I'd like to say it's really important to look at what's not in your diet, eliminating certain foods. There are many superfoods that are considered very wonderful, pure, organic, green foods like kale and spinach and Brussels sprouts, and I can't eat them, and many people can't eat them because they rob us of nutrients. They rob us of enzymes. They destroy proteins. They destroy and bind to B vitamins. They destroy and bind to minerals like zinc, and so they carry them out of the body like oxalates. So this is a real problem, and the literature has shown that this is a problem. So sometimes we have to do an elimination diet and get rid of certain foods that otherwise seem very wholesome to us, and they may not be good for some of us. And also looking at EMFs and electromagnetic fields and blue light, which is why I'm wearing my crazy glasses today, trying to mitigate blue light when it's not noon where I live. So I hope this helps you understand whether the chicken came first or the egg came first, it was the gut or it was the brain.